everyone, to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators to discuss key insights, strategies, and experiences that drive success both for themselves and their customers. I'm Billy Mitchell, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Allison Snow, the CMO of StreamPoint, which is a leading event and technology platform that empowers organizations to streamline registration, housing, engagement, and data insights for in-person events. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Absolutely excellent, Billy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, likewise. It's going to be a good conversation. I was enjoying our pre-podcast conversation. I was thinking, man, all of this needs to be in our podcast. So I'm excited to jump in some questions. Just to set the stage for you and everybody else, this podcast is broken up into three primary sections. We're going to learn a little bit more about you and your organization. We want to then jump into the industry as a whole and your ideal customer. And then, of course, the meat and potatoes, why a lot of us are listening, is the growth and scale, kind of what you guys have done that's working, not working, maybe some lessons you've learned, and where you see the future going. So if you're ready, I've got my first question lined up. You want to go?
You know I do.
Awesome. All right. So real quick, 90 seconds. Give us an overview of who you are and what you do and why are you doing it.
Absolutely. So I am title-wise, as you said, Chief Marketing Officer of StreamPoint Solutions, event tech firm. I absolutely love the event tech professional. So I have a background. I've been a marketer forever. I took 4 years and sort of did a thing where I was an analyst at a company called Forrester and served B2B marketers for a while. And one of the things that I learned there all the time was how folks were spending their money. We just did a lot of benchmarking. So in the world of B2B marketing, we found that constantly and consistently, depending on your source, but at Forrester was consistently, and other sources support this, about 30% of a program budget for B2B marketers is events. And this is really interesting for a couple of reasons. It is where most of the event spend, where most of the program budget goes. It is not always the obsession of the demand gen manager or the demand gen leader, which is kind of interesting in itself. And it is not where we got a ton of inquiries as an analyst firm. So it was sort of a slightly separate, isolated program that sort of relied on demand gen, of course, and demand gen and brand kind of served it, but not as integrated as you'd expect for just the biggest line item in a program budget. And so that always intrigued me. And as a colleague of event marketers, they were the go-to professionals. Just these are some of the most creative and the most analytical, at the same time, unusual folks to work with, who just they come to the meeting with the agenda. If you don't have an agenda, they don't want to come to your meeting. All the activities and behaviors that you respect as a colleague. And I sort of took those two pieces of data and brought them with me, and I'm pretty happy in the event tech space.
That's awesome.
Because of it.
Yeah, so, it's funny you brought up a couple key points there, and I'm wondering if I understood you correctly. Event marketing and event execution sometimes almost lives on a bit of an island by itself as something that's really critical and important, but do you find in your experience that it often is not super well connected to the rest of the sales and marketing activities? And to set the stage a little bit more, we work with a lot of B2B companies, and we actually have built a package for helping customers support an event marketing program, right? Or an event program rather. So all of your pre-marketing, your during the event marketing, your post-marketing, and understanding how to capture all of that hard work you're putting into being able to go and shake hands at a live event. Do you find that customers generally are looking at events kind of on an island, or are they really well integrated?
Where they're integrated so well.
Yeah.
So you do absolutely see that. I think the parts that are more intriguing for the podcast and from my experience are those that are not. So there's a number of reasons for that. One, it is sometimes a distinct team. And it is a distinct team that is serving a lot of functions. So I've never worked in an environment where a salesperson didn't say to me, or an account executive didn't say to me, whether I was in events or not, Allison, you've got to get my You've got to get me out there. I've got to shake hands. I've got to see people in person. I don't know that I'm coming back with pipeline. I don't know. I do know I'm coming back with warmer relationships, a better shot at a deal. The deal could be 2 years away, but that's what you do, right? Marketing, you don't live for the quarterly pipeline. You live for the extended pipeline. Um, what I'm saying there is, I think event managers at times, they are supporting the business in ways that are difficult for all of us to articulate. I know it in my heart, you know it in your heart, the event planner knows it in your heart. There's no CFO in the world that cares about what's in our hearts. And so I think they face this in the organizations where it's tremendously integrated. There's an idea of the importance of relationship building, of being present, of all of these things that events bring to bear, as well as the pipeline that it brings to bear. Where they're disconnected, I think event managers are under so much pressure to prove ROI. It's just one of the things that kind of breaks when events aren't part of the full ecosystem. And that pressure can be difficult because, in fact, you cannot create a buying moment, right? One of the things that we know about buyers is depending on the stat you believe, maybe 5% of folks are in market for what you sell at any given moment. Give or plus a few percentage depending on the industry that you're in. So as marketers and event marketers, we don't create buying moments, but we do facilitate them. We want to be there as the trusted advisor, the trusted firm, the trusted vendor, service provider when that moment occurs. And events, I think, are absolutely number one for that. They are the reason that they're 30% of program budget, but because they're not necessarily part of the ecosystem of every marketing department, I would say that's kind of the first signal that something is broken, that someone is coming to you and saying, I've got to prove pipeline ROI with this event. And everyone in the room is kind of silently thinking, I'm not sure that's what this channel is for. And yet you face that, and yet we understand.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it really is. You mentioned it at the start of that, all about the relationship, right? And being at an event allows you that face to face, allows you that handshake, allows you that moment where everybody is in there looking for, at least related to something that you have, right? It's funny. I have a buddy of mine who is flying to India, and I said, "What are you doing there?" And he said, "55 hours of travel for a 6-hour meeting." And I said, "Sounds like the true value of a handshake, huh?" And I think that ultimately people can undervalue what that in-person presence does. So, all that to say, and a creative way to lead into my next question, let's talk about your ideal client. So, who are your customers? What kind of events are they putting on? And how are you supporting them?
Absolutely. So we deal with and sell to and support a lot of association clients. So there's an association for everything. It turns out, I will tell you that, more than I knew when I started. But they face some pretty specific challenges. One, they are massive events. So we're talking an exhibitor count of something like 500 to 1,000, let alone attendee count. So massively complex events, and that's where we kind of shine. If you are a membership organization, gathering is a very, very high priority for you. Education of those members, cultivation of those members, retention of those members, just like if you were a SaaS platform, is critical. And they want to do a few things that the average registration system doesn't necessarily do, such as countless different registration paths. So you may be the easy ones are speaker or VIP or another kind of path, but you might be a leader of a regional membership organization. You might be a recruit. You might be someone that leads fields events for them. You might be a member whose membership is past due, so not technically a member, and that has to launch a whole different workflow. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But who they really are, these are associations with deep missions, and that feels really good. A lot of cultural events that we just feel really good about supporting. So our ideal client, though, for us, sort of makes use of our full portfolio. So we're a registration system, and that is a big part of what these folks need for these massive events. But we're also a room block management system. And in that case, we are helping folks say, hey, whether you are contracting with hotels for blocks or not contracting and need a more flexible solution, we kind of provide the solution that says, wherever folks are staying from your event, you know it. And the reason why these folks really want to know that is, one, it's not uncommon for them to run satisfaction surveys and correlate that data with, hey, we had some folks who didn't have, maybe a level 10 time. It's possible that's correlated with some place that they may have stayed from a hotel perspective. Others say, hey, it's really important for me to be able to sell a sponsorship based on where people are staying. So you might sell the sponsorship. Now, these member organizations are just like you and me. Sources of revenue are welcome. So we're able to come and say, hey, if you've got Scaling Smart as a sponsor, you might want to sell a welcome gift to folks staying at the hotel where most of your folks are staying, or even sell a mode of transportation. A ton of events are in Vegas. You've been there and I have too. It's a mile away. It's 110 degrees. That can be a valuable thing. So that's the core of what we do. And so our ideal clients are sort of massive in terms of attendee count, have to serve their exhibitors really well with things like lead retrieval software and other things that help them succeed. It's a big part of the revenue for our clients, and need a housing solution as well.
That's incredible. As you were explaining that, I was thinking about some of the events that I've been to, and realizing there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and several of them. I've been to an organization I'm part of. They hold a yearly event in Austin, San Diego, and they occasionally switch it up at somewhere in Mexico. And just thinking about all the room blocks that the emails I get your room here at a discount, whatever the case might be. And your point is so incredibly valid. Oftentimes, there is a distinct difference in if I stay off-site or on-site, my satisfaction of the event. And the reality is I'm there for the event, but staying at the hotel that the event is at, typically it's a nice hotel. There's a lot more benefits that come with it. So my overall experience is a lot better when I stay on site. It's very interesting, and I love it. There's actually a lot I'd like to go into that, but we'll have to save that. So let's talk about your industry. I'm going to ask really simple, basic questions, but is your industry competitive? And how are you standing out in comparison to other organizations doing this?
Yeah, I think that it is absolutely competitive. When we go after business, I'll be honest with your audience, it's generally true that someone has a solution. So we are never going into white space in an organization. We are going in to say we're better and here's why. And some of those reasons are we've really built a product from the ground up. And that's different from a lot of folks in the industry who have acquired and acquired and acquired, to the point that the platform for a user feels like it was an acquired and acquired and acquired and bolted on and bolted on and bolted on. So the fact that for instance, our housing platform that I described was built to be compatible, more than compatible, to be in the same platform as our registration system means that, for instance, if you're an event planner, you send an invitation to register, a person registers, and in that same moment, they can go ahead and book housing. Now, for any other platform, you're not able to do that because registration doesn't talk to housing. And I think that for event, and that's just one example, I can definitely go into more, but for what I want to make, the bigger statement I want to make is where we differentiate is we're really thinking through the eyes of the event planner, and we're saying, hey, we know a few things about you. One, sources of revenue are really important. So we're going to build into our product sponsorship opportunities whenever we can. Two, perhaps if you were measured on one thing, and they're not, they're measured on a ton of things and it's complex, but perhaps if there was one thing, it's returned attendees. It's folks who said, I loved it so much, I got to go back, right? It's that number getting bigger every year because there's zero churn in attendees. Now, while that's impossible, little things like booking housing at the same time is an incredible experience for someone who is otherwise going to get 3 emails chasing them saying, hey, have you booked? And without our housing platform, they might have booked and you don't know. Which means a number of things. One, you don't get the commissions from that hotel stay, but that's a whole other story. Two, you don't really have the insight to understand how to go to a hotel the next year and negotiate a better contract for yourself, because you don't really know what you're dealing with in terms of volume. So I think it's our constant kind of, from a product perspective, we're thinking, how do we delight the folks that have to be delighted for an event planner to say, everyone that matters to me is happy. And those people tend to be attendees, first and foremost, exhibitors, for sure. They are the lifeblood and cash behind most of the events that we deal with. And three, the event planners themselves, who don't want to use a clunky platform that was kind of bolted on from, something from the 90s, and then, some AI functionality that's pretty cool bolted on there, and other stuff. So
Sure.
I think the industry is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it reminds me of, I'm a West Coast kid. I live in Austin now, but in California, there's a museum there called the Winchester Mystery House. I think it's Winchester Mystery House. And the house itself was built very similar to what you're saying, staircases that go nowhere, and doors that open to, the outside from the second floor. It's kind of all hodgepodge put together. And that's, I can understand how your user experience is not going to be fun, to say the least. And it sounds like you're bringing a unified, easy to manage and easy to operate system that will support your customer base, which is awesome. So with that, where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe 3 to 5 years, depending on how fast it's changing?
Yeah, it's changing fast. I'm going to say the letters AI, and that's not the first time you've heard that when you've asked this question, so I won't pretend it is. I think that event planners are frustrated with event tech. So it's a very, again, a tremendous group of professionals who are saying, look, we've got ideas that are big. We know that there is return on investment that we've kind of had trouble proving. And basically every year that gets more important, right? That we prove that. So we've got to do a couple of things as event professionals, and vendors like me have to help them. One is, how do we retell the story of what value from an event is? Maybe, Billy, we say, in fact, these are pipeline drivers. They are going to make money, in which case we have to kind of think about what that looks like, meeting the moment for sales, etc. I'm not sure I would bet on that path. I would bet on the path that says, what if we started to place value on things like insights, things like intent data that we find at events, things like, we're able right now, we've been able for years to say, hey, this person went to this session, that's great. Where marketers have struggled, and event planners, I think, have struggled in conjunction with their marketers, is to say, every piece of this is insight. We pay massively for digital intent data, digital signals. We pay through the nose for that as marketers. And we struggle because of systems, because of time, because there's endless things you can do with intent data. We struggle to activate it in a way that is certainly easy and certainly automatic. AI will change that. So as we are able to collect signals and data, particularly in an in-person event, at which the ultimate signal is flying there, first and foremost, right? So we've got a massive signal of intent for something. But we've got behaviors, we've got questions asked, we've got people met, we've got networking events attended, we've got sessions attended. So I think the future is restating the value of events to say, you guys in marketing, you guys in tech, you guys in finance, all of these industries have paid massively for intent data, insights, just ways to build your audience differently, segment your audience, treat your audiences differently, write better content. I think we have an opportunity, and I think we're on the ground floor of this, to be honest, to start resetting what the R and the ROI metric really means, and the things that you can say, we achieved this with this event. You guys never counted it because it wasn't quantifiable, but we've quantified it.
Wow. I love that. And I actually have some stuff I'd like to talk to you offline related to that. So I think there's some real opportunity there. But let's go ahead and let that pivot ourselves into growth and scale for you and your organization. as we are talking a lot about audience and data and metrics and just overall tactics for marketing and sales and growing your organization. You and I were starting to have a really interesting conversation offline about how the buying process and the buyers have really changed. So let's dive into how are you guys currently marketing or growing or adding pipeline or adding revenue, and what are some of the challenges that you're witnessing right now?
For sure. So I think I will start with we're a 25-year-old firm, and we have got a fantastic reputation among the people with whom we've done business. We are absolutely committed to growing our brand, which needs some growth and awareness. And my approach to that has been with perspective and with education, as well as a solid product that people kind of rave about, and getting folks to kind of talk to other people about it. Advocacy, I think advocacy, someone said recently, it's not my quote, advocacy is, it's the playbook for modern marketing. The quote is so much better than that. I'll email it to you and you can edit it, but it is where it's at, right? Just knowing what other people trust, that's it. But in order to activate that, my method of sales and marketing and go-to-market in general is to create trust. Great. So what does that mean? That is the most generic thing you've ever heard. Well, it means understanding what objections your target market has and precisely when, and being the person and the entity that can answer them. So one, from a sales perspective, it means ask the questions that uncover the objections as soon as possible, right? Let's not dance around them. Let's ask them. Importantly for me on the marketing side, let's actually address them in articles, in talks, in coming on a podcast like this and talking about the different ways to measure value of an event. Like how do we have the back of the folks to whom we sell that we appreciate so much? What do they need to learn about? What are they struggling with? For a while that is hybrid working. We had to have a perspective on that.
Yeah.
How do I measure the value of an event? That's why I have, a perspective on that we're still building out. So we want to be the resource that says, hey, when you're learning about building a complex in-person event, when you just finished your event with a competitor and you're saying, my gosh, I think that could have gone more smoothly. There's a couple of things I'd have liked. We want to be there to say, here's what we do differently, and match that with what we know, Billy, about the changing buyer. So again, depending on what stat you believe, I'm going to say it's 85%. A person is 85% convinced of at least who they're going to champion in terms of a vendor for their business's needs by the time they talk to a salesperson. I believe that's probably, we have product-led growth where that's 99% and some you're buying an airplane, whatever. But somewhere, all the folks that we're talking to today, it's about 85%. And that 85%, you've got to answer questions before they're asked. So it's a mind reading exercise, it's an insights exercise, it's being so tight knit with those folks in your sales organization and your post-sale organization and your customer success organization that says, where are folks falling down using the product? Let's fix it from either a product or an education perspective. Where are folks losing confidence in their buying process? And by the way, that first means you need an event software before we even talk about whether you need ours, right? Like we've got to build demand for the entire infrastructure of what folks need. Here's how to build an event. Here's what a good event looks like. Here's what folks that look just like you are doing and how they're creating value in their organizations through events. So again, being the person on the marketing side of the GTM, which I like to think has no sides, but I will say that in this conversation, we're talking about, shouting from the megaphone in some ways. So of course we're segmenting, of course we're doing the good work of not shouting from the megaphone. But while we have one in channels like, publishing articles, publishing in general, speaking when we can, writing when we can, we're really trying to say, this is a professional that we like and care about and truly want to help. And we want them to make a really confident buying decision. I want to send folks to CX who are thrilled not folks who are like, we ended up with you because you were the best of a very poor group of options, right? And that takes a whole lot of work from, again, if folks are doing that research 85% of their time before they speak to you, that becomes my entire responsibility on the marketing side.
Yeah, I think you're really tapping into an important piece, which is buyers generally are more educated and prepared than ever before. They're very unlikely to be having a conversation with you not having really understood either the problem that they have and that there is a solution, or even you specifically, and that you can provide that solution. So in order for that to be done in the right way, you're absolutely right. You need to put on the persona of your buyer and then ask the questions of yourself. If I were a customer of ours, what are the challenges that I would see? What are the questions I would ask? What are some of the things that I would want to know, and proactively provide that information, because ultimately that will help your sales process move smoother if you're handling those objections prior to even having a call with them. And then when you're handling the objections on a call or a demo of some sort, then you can point back to, oh, well, we have an article that would be really valuable for you to take a look at. Here's kind of a summary of it, whatever the case might be. Oh, our founder 3 months ago actually did a talk on this exact thing that you just brought up. And now, not only are you providing the answer, but you're showing that you're a resource. And so I think
Totally.
that being able to have that foundation built is going to be an incredible way to show authority to your audience.
It's true, and I think it's so validating I know for me as a buyer, if I have a question and you say, yes, we've thought of that, I feel like that's the right question.
Yeah.
I'm a little validated by that. I love that you thought of it, of course, as a vendor, and you're prepared to answer the question, and also kind of, oh yeah, we have a guide for that. That just builds trust and confidence. So I think that's all good. I'm very grateful for the G2 crowds and the trust radiuses of the world. I think that is, if folks on this podcast aren't paying attention to that for yourself and your competitors, what an enormous, I mean, the most generous of insights we have seen, I think, as go-to-market professionals. Just this, here, take it. I did it. I was in it. I used it. I bought it. And here's what my experience was like. I think it's been an absolute gold mine.
That's good. I think there's some really important, valuable lessons in there, and I appreciate you sharing those. So, got one more question, and then I'm going to do a fun round. It's called the lightning round, where I'm just going to ask you some random questions. First thing that comes to your mind, I want you to answer. But before we get there, tell us, what is one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career? Not necessarily, where you're at right now, but just in general. How has it shaped you, and how has it changed how you do business?
Yeah. I think the last few years, people say COVID, and maybe COVID was a big part of it, but what we definitely saw was a massive pivot. Take COVID out, edit that out if you can. I'm kidding. But we saw a massive pivot, again, saying what a lot of folks have said, but I'm going to give you my own spin after: growth at all costs to efficiency.
Yep.
As someone who has been working for the amount of time I haven't experienced a ton of efficiency. Now, I've been in very small organizations that didn't have massive budgets. I've actually never had much of a massive budget, but I've certainly been the vendor at the VC or privately funded companies that said, we are going from A to B, sometimes quite literally in terms of a series, but sometimes just in terms of revenue growth is what we need. So go ahead, use what you need, be smart about it, spend it like it's your own money. Don't be a jerk, but use what you need to plot the path from A to B to C to D. That change, I think, has the change to not quite slow down, guys. It's not as much VC money, it's not as much private money. Efficient growth is where it's at. I think that's somewhat new for everyone in my seat, everyone in the go-to-market seat. And I think it has been almost a defining characteristic of a career in the go-to-market side for folks who have been doing this about 20 or 25 years. And I think that the increased, whatever you think about the geopolitical risk, it is out there. Everybody's kind of thinking about it. When we say words like recession, it matters, right? It matters for the budgets and the spending capability of the folks that we target as customers. And it matters for how much we can spend, frankly, beating our own chests about what we offer and trying to get that word out to folks so that they're aware of us and finding the answers to the questions they have when they have them. So in terms of changing, in terms of that, I think we've basically said, hey, it's forced us to do a lot of things that we knew were the right things anyway. So I'm going to say just one thing, and then if you have a follow-up, we'll go there. But one thing we've learned, I think, collectively, and certainly I have here for this position, is there's no such thing as a siloed channel. If you're pushing emails, newsletter that are disconnected from events and live demos, that are disconnected from even a post-sale QBR conversation, right? You are inefficient.
Yep.
If you are not saying the same things to customers, in demos, you are inefficient. If you are not working according to systems, right, rather than just kind of reinventing the wheel every single time, you are inefficient. So I think it's taught us to be almost alarmed, and probably should have been this way all along, but weren't. But really just alarmed when we see this, where you're going to an event, great, like what's the air cover? How do we make the most out of this event, even if it costs more in the moment, and that's doesn't appear as efficient. The fact is, we can't just show up, right? We're just wasting time and money, and we do that. We're wasting time and money if we just have a newsletter that doesn't play in the context of our larger ecosystem. So I think just one of the ways that we have dealt with that as marketing professionals across the board is to really kind of say every channel, every activity needs air cover, or it is random and strange and unwelcome by the marketplace.
I love that. And about 5 years ago, I actually changed a lot of our sales approach to tell the story that sales and marketing can no longer live in silos. Marketing can't throw a lead over the fence and say, here you go, and sales throw it back, say it's a garbage lead, and then marketing saying, no, you just suck at your job. It's like we're all on the same team. Everything is playing with each other, and we all have one unified goal at the end of it. And if we're not rowing the boat in the right, or rowing the ship in the same direction, we're going to go in circles, and nobody wants to do that anymore. So I love that. Well, this has been incredible. I really value your time and your insights. I think our audience will as well. I'm looking forward to jumping in the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Don't worry, they're not challenging. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Coffee or tea?
I was too busy being excited. I didn't hear you.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, every coffee.
Yes, absolutely. Biggest trend you're going to see that's going to shape your industry in the next 5 years?
Personalization driven by AI.
Love that. Favorite book, podcast, or resource that's influenced your business? Well, influenced you?
Favorite book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Please read it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, please read it. Old book. I love Atomic Habits. I know it's just ripped from the headlines, but gosh, it is really the way that I stack my habits now based on reading that is truly life-changing. So I really do try to sell that to folks as well.
I love that. It's funny. I had a couple books delivered the other day, and my wife said, "How do you have time for all these books?" And I said, "I just love books. They're good." All right. Yeah. One bucket list item you've already checked off.
Seeing Saturday Night Live in person.
That would be fun. That's awesome. And then
on my list for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. What's one goal you're still working towards?
This doesn't sound like much of a goal, but it's the first thing, and those are the rules. Taking 2 weeks off for a West Coast trip.
I love that. Let me know when you head out there. I'll tell you places to go.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Finally, Allison, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch?
I'm Allison Snow on LinkedIn. I think I'm one of just a couple, so you should be able to find me. I look a little bit like this. We're streampoint.com. We've got a blog we love for folks to check out. And if you're an event planner and you ever want to chat with me and tell me a little bit about your life and your problems and how I can speak to you in a way that makes you feel seen more than we do, I would certainly welcome that. Excellent. All the time.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison, so much for joining our podcast. For everybody else, this is a wrap of this episode of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Scaling Smart Podcast, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories, who have learned how to scale smart.